Chapter 5. The Health Belief Model. Select sub Skinner Jasmine Tyro Victoria Ella Champion. Key points. This chapter will discuss origins of the Health Belief Model, HBM, and its relationship to psychosocial theories. Describe key components and critical assumptions of the HBM. Present empirical evidence about the HBM. Give examples of applications of the HBM to colorectal cancer screening and human papillomavirus, HPV, vaccination. Since the 1950s, the Health Belief Model, HBM, has been one of the most widely used conceptual frameworks in health behavior research, both to explain change of health-related behaviors and as a guiding framework for interventions. Over the decades, the HBM has been expanded, compared, and contrasted to other frameworks and used to inform interventions to change health behavior. In this chapter, we review the HBM's historical development, core constructs, hypotheses, relationships of constructs to each other and to specific health behaviors, and empirical evidence. The HBM has been used with many different behaviors. We provide in-depth examples from interventions to increase colon cancer screening and descriptive/correlational studies using HBM constructs to understand HPV vaccine uptake. Finally, we discuss how researchers can advance understanding and use of the HBM to predict behavior and the theory's utility in designing health behavior interventions. We also discuss limitations of the theory, background on the health belief model, origins of the health belief model. The health belief model was developed in the 1950s by social psychologists in the U.S. Public Health Service to explain the widespread failure of people to participate in Glanz, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches Glanz, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 76. 76 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. Programs to Prevent and Detect Disease, Hochbaum, 1958, Rosenstock, 1960. At that time, researchers and health professionals were concerned because few people were getting screened for tuberculosis, TB, even though mobile X-ray vans came to their neighborhoods. Later, the model was extended to study people's behavioral responses to opportunities to detect diseases when people are treatable and potentially curable and when diagnosed with illnesses. Research on response to illnesses has focused particularly on adherence to medical regimens that would alleviate symptoms. Becker, 1974, Kirsch, 1974. The HBM's constructs were built on tenets of cognitive theory, briefly reviewed below. During the first half of the 20th century, social psychologists developed two major approaches for explaining behavior: stimulus response theory, Watson, 1925, and cognitive theory, Lewin, 1951, Tolman, 1932. Stimulus response theorists believe that events, termed reinforcements, affect physiological drives that activate behavior. B. F. Skinner formulated the widely accepted hypothesis that frequency of a behavior is determined by its consequences or reinforcements, Skinner, 1938. For Skinner, the mere temporal association between a behavior and an immediately following reward was thought to be sufficient to increase the probability that the behavior would be repeated. According to stimulus response theory, behavior is automatic and does not require mental processes, such as reasoning or thinking. Conversely, cognitive theorists believed that reinforcements operated by influencing expectations rather than by influencing behavior directly. Mental processes such as thinking, reasoning, hypothesizing, or expecting are critical components of cognitive theories, which are often termed value expectancy models, because they propose that behavior is a function of the degree to which individuals value an outcome and their assessment of the probability, or expectation, that a particular action will achieve that outcome. Kohler, 1925, Lewin, Dembo, Festinger, and Sears, 1944. For health-related behaviors, the value is avoiding illnesses and staying or getting well. The expectation is that a specific health action may prevent or ameliorate an illness or condition for which people believe they might be at risk. Key components of the HBM. The health belief model contains several primary components, or constructs, that predict whether and why people will take action to prevent, detect, or control illness conditions. These constructs include perceived susceptibility, perceived severity, perceived benefits, and barriers to engaging in a behavior, cues to action, and self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is rooted in Bandura's social cognitive theory which, unlike other concurrent theories, emphasizes the role of learning and human agency in behavior. That is, according to social learning theory, Behavior is guided by cognitive and affective factors as well as biological and external events. Bandura, 2005. See Chapter 9 for an extended discussion of self-efficacy. Findings from Hochbaum's 1958 initial study of participation in TB screening were striking. Among individuals who believed that they were more susceptible to tuberculosis and that there were benefits from early detection, 82% had at least one voluntary chest X-ray. In contrast, only 21% of those who perceived lower personal susceptibility and benefits obtained X-rays. The overall premise of the HBM is that people are likely to engage in a health behavior if they believe that. Glanz, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches Glanz, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m., page 77. Background on the Health Belief Model 77. 1. They are susceptible to a condition, at risk for a disease. 2. The condition could have potentially serious consequences. 3. A course of action, behavior, available to them could be of benefit in reducing either their susceptibility to or the severity of the condition. 4. There are benefits to taking action. 5. Their perceived barriers, or costs, are outweighed by the benefits and are not strong enough to prevent action. The model applies to behaviors with the potential to reduce risk of developing a disease as well as the effects of an existing disease, example medication adherence. Definitions of HBM constructs are summarized in Table 5.1. Figure 5.1 illustrates relationships among constructs. Perceived susceptibility is defined as belief about the likelihood of getting a disease or condition. For instance, a woman must believe that she is at risk of getting colon cancer before she is willing to take action by getting screened. Perceived severity is a belief about the seriousness of contracting an illness or condition or of leaving it untreated, including physical consequences, example, death, disability, and pain, and social consequences, example, having the ability to work, maintaining relationships with others, or feeling stigmatized. Perceived threat is the construct formed by the combination of susceptibility and severity. Perceived susceptibility should be multiplied by perceived severity to calculate perceived threat. Thus, if either of these components is 0, the perceived threat would be 0. Perceived benefits are beliefs about positive features or advantages of a recommended action to reduce threat. These benefits might reduce threat of a disease or its consequences. Other non-health related benefits might be tangible, such as the financial savings related to quitting smoking, or social, such as the satisfaction that may come from doing what a physician recommends or pleasing a family member who has expressed concern about one's lung cancer risk. Perceived barriers are defined as possible obstacles to taking action, which can include negative consequences resulting from an action. These perceived obstacles and negative consequences impede action or subsequent engagement in the behavior. Obstacles may include inconvenience, cost, or fear of a screening procedure. Consequences may be tangible. If I quit, I will be ridiculed by my still smoking friends, or psychological, trying to quit. Smoking might cause me to become anxious. Cues to action. Early formulations of the HBM included the concept of cues that can trigger actions. For example, Hochbaum, 1958, proposed that perceived susceptibility and perceived benefits were relevant only when activated by other factors he termed cues to instigate action. Cues could be internal, example, feeling a symptom that increased perceived threat, or external, example, media publicity, a recommendation from a physician during an office visit, receipt of a free sample, or even a friend's diagnosis. Cues have not been well defined, Hochbaum, 1958, nor systematically studied. This is a deficit in our understanding of the HBM. Strecker and Rosenstock, 1997, suggested that cues operate mainly through perceived threat. A painful sunburn might prompt one to feel at increased risk of skin cancer and to Glanz, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches Glanz, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m., page 78. 78 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. Table 5.1 Key HBM Components, Conceptual Definitions, and Intervention Strategies. Concepts, concept definition, intervention strategy to influence concept, perceived susceptibility beliefs about the likelihood of getting a disease or condition, define populations at risk and levels. Personalize risk based on person's individual characteristics or behaviors. Make an individual's perceptions more consistent with his or her actual risk. Perceived severity beliefs about the seriousness of contracting a disease or condition, including consequences. Specify consequences of risks and conditions. Trigger emotions like distress and regret with images. Perceived benefits beliefs about the positive aspects of adopting a health behavior, example efficacy of the behavior for reducing risk or serious consequences. Shift individuals' perspective by highlighting others' beliefs about the behavior and its effects. Provide knowledge and arguments in favor of the behavior. Perceived barriers beliefs about obstacles to performing a behavior and the negative aspects, both tangible and psychological costs, of adopting a health behavior. Identify and reduce perceived barriers through reassurance, correction of misinformation, incentives, and assistance. Cues to action internal or external factors that could trigger the health behavior, promote awareness. Use appropriate reminder and recall systems. Self-efficacy beliefs that one can perform the recommended health behavior, confidence. Provide training and guidance in performing the recommended action. Use progressive goal setting. Give verbal reinforcement. Demonstrate or model desired behaviors. Reduce anxiety about taking action. Add sunscreen to the shopping list. Hofbaum also suggested scenarios through which a cue directly prompted behaviors, without operating through beliefs. His often used classroom example was a point-of-purchase display at the drugstore counter that prompts a person to throw a tube of sunscreen in his basket, without changing his perceptions. That is, the person believed in the benefits of sunscreen but would have left the store without it were it not for the prompt and easy access at the cash register. Glanz, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches. Glanz, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 79. Background on the health belief model 79. Other variables. An assumption of HBM is that demographic, structural, and psychosocial factors may affect beliefs and indirectly influence health behaviors. For example, socio-demographic factors, such as educational attainment, can indirectly influence behaviors by altering perceptions of susceptibility, severity, benefits, and barriers. Rosenstock, 1974, Salloway, Fletcher, and Collins, 1978. However, the model does not specify how such factors operate or interact with other constructs. This is a major gap in the HBM. Efficacy expectations. Years after the health belief model was developed, Bandura articulated the constructs of self-efficacy and outcome efficacy expectations. See chapter. Other variables. An assumption of HBM is that demographic, structural, and psychosocial factors may affect beliefs and indirectly influence health behaviors. For example, socio-demographic factors, such as educational attainment, can indirectly influence behaviors by altering perceptions of susceptibility, severity, benefits, and barriers. Rosenstock, 1974, Salloway, Fletcher, and Collins, 1978. However, the model does not specify how such factors operate or interact with other constructs. This is a major gap in the HBM. Efficacy expectations. Years after the health belief model was developed, Bandura articulated the constructs of self-efficacy and outcome efficacy expectations. See Chapter 9 for a more thorough discussion of self-efficacy. Outcome efficacy, beliefs about the extent to which a particular behavior will lead to a certain outcome. Bandura, 1997-1999, is similar to the HBM construct of perceived benefits. But the construct of self-efficacy, the conviction that one can successfully execute a behavior, was not clearly represented by an HBM construct, although lack of self-efficacy was sometimes added as a barrier to taking action. Mahoney, Toms, and Ford, 1995. In 1988, Rosenstock, Strecker, and Becker suggested that self-efficacy be added to the HBM as a separate construct. Oak rationalization of the HBM, critical assumptions and hypotheses. Health belief model components are depicted in Figure 5.1. Arrows indicate pathways through which constructs are linked to each other and to health behaviors. As shown, socio-demographic variables, such as age, sex, race, education, or socioeconomic issues, such as insurance status, may moderate relationships between health beliefs and health behaviors. For example, because cancer is more prevalent among older people, a person's age may moderate the relationship between perceived threat and cancer screening behavior, with the result that older individuals may believe themselves to be at greater risk for cancer and rate cancer as a more severe disease than younger adults do. Gender may moderate the effects of perceived susceptibility. Age, gender, ethnicity, personality, socioeconomics, knowledge. Perceived susceptibility to and severity of disease. Modifying factors, individual beliefs, action. Perceived threat. Individual behaviors. Cues to action. Perceived benefits. Perceived barriers. Perceived self-efficacy. Figure 5.1 Components of the Health Belief Model Glands, K, 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glands, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 80. 80 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. And benefits on HPV vaccination because females are more aware of the link between HPV infection and cervical cancer, whereas males may not know that HPV infection can lead to cancers that affect males, such as anal, penile, and oropharyngeal cancers. Cues to action may affect health behaviors either directly or indirectly through their influence on health beliefs. The HBM clearly specifies that health beliefs collectively affect behaviors, but precise combinations, weights, and relationships among variables are not delineated. Abraham and Sheeran, 2005. This ambiguity has led to variation in how the HBM is applied in research. For example, while many studies have evaluated the direct path of beliefs to a given health behavior, others have tested mathematical combinations of constructs that were not part of the model's original specifications. Some researchers have evaluated whether barriers should be subtracted from benefits. Becker and Mayman, 1975. They have argued that, conceptually, a kind of unconscious cost benefit analysis occurs wherein individuals weigh the behavior's expected benefits against perceived barriers. It could help me, but it may be expensive, painful, unpopular, unpleasant, or inconvenient, and so forth. This combination of benefits and barriers is similar to the trans-theoretical model's proposition that pros and cons are weighed against each other to form a single decisional balance score. See Chapter 7 for a more thorough discussion of decisional balance, defined as weighing the pros/benefits against the cons/barriers of a health behavior. In contrast, Weinstein, 1988, argued that benefits and barriers are qualitatively different and should be treated as distinct constructs with the potential to have different pathways linking them to other HBM constructs and behavior. Weinstein's position has been borne out in the HBM context through psychometric testing of barrier and benefit scales, showing that they act as separate factors. Champion, 1984, 1993, 1999, Champion and Scott. 1997, Tyro et al., 2005. Recent studies using structural equation modeling to test multiple pathways also show that benefits and barriers have independent effects on behavior. Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Murphy, Vernon, Diamond, and Tyro, 2014. The HBM initially was designed to explain adoption of health-related behaviors by identifying predictive constructs. These constructs continue to be used because they have been consistently found to affect health behaviors. Painter, Borba, Hines, Mays, and Glanz, 2008. However, theory development and analytic methods to test theories have become significantly more sophisticated since the HBM was conceptualized. Now, instead of comprehensive application and testing of the HBM, it is more common for researchers to combine HBM constructs with constructs from other theories. Brewer and Reimer, 2008, Lanz and Bishop, 2010. Empirical evidence for the HBM. There are two questions for determining whether evidence supports the health belief model. 1. Are HBM constructs associated with health behaviors? 2. Are interventions targeting HBM constructs effective in changing health behaviors? A comprehensive review of all work using the HBM to address health behaviors since the model's development is beyond the scope of this chapter. Instead, we summarize systematic reviews and meta-analyses focused on answering these two key questions. We also describe limitations in the model's application. Glanz, K., 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glands, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 81. Background on the health belief model 81. Do HBM constructs influence health behaviors? Critical reviews of the HBM's predictive validity were published at 4 different times and covered different studies. In addition, each review used slightly different methods, Table 5.2, and, because they were published at different times, Carpenter, 2010, Harrison, Mullen, and Green, 1992, Jans and Becker, 1984, Zimmerman and Wernberg, 1994, included different sets of studies. Jans and Becker, 1984, and Zimmerman and Wernberg, 1994, calculated a significance ratio for each construct, defined as the number of studies that found a significant association divided by the total number of studies measuring the construct. Zimmerman and Wernberg, 1994, examined the model as a whole, example, all the constructs added together, for predicting behavior. Carpenter covered the literature from 1982 to 2007 and focused on moderators. 3 of the 4 reviews, Carpenter, 2010, Harrison et al., 1992, Zimmerman and Wernberg, 1994, calculated a weighted mean effect size, which is a summary measure of the magnitude of each construct's relationship with behaviors, taking into account differences in study sample size and design. All of these reviewers were interested in quantifying each construct's direct effects on behaviors and did not examine whether HBM constructs also have indirect effects on behavior through other variables. Collectively, these quantitative reviews have combined the results of more than 89 studies for an overall assessment of the model's performance. Results of these critical reviews have provided substantial empirical support for HBM constructs from both prospective and retrospective research. However, the magnitude of each of the construct's effects is small. Table 5.2 summarizes the range of effects. Perceived barriers are the most powerful single construct predictor across all studies and behaviors. Carpenter, 2010, Harrison et al., 1992. Perceived benefits are the second most important construct, with the magnitude of effect higher for prevention and risk reduction behaviors. Influenza vaccination, child safety restraints versus treatment behaviors, adherence to a drug or medical regimen. Perceived susceptibility follows the same pattern as benefits, being a stronger predictor of preventive health behaviors. Jans and Becker, 1984, most of which are one-time or periodic actions, like having a screening test, rather than behaviors like smoking cessation or physical activity that must be maintained over time. Jans and Becker, 1984, and Harrison et al., 1992, concluded that perceived severity is the weakest predictor, whereas Carpenter, 2010, identified susceptibility as weakest. It is unclear why susceptibility and benefits differ in magnitude across the various analyses. An explanation may lie, in part, in the debate whether perceived susceptibility and severity should be combined additively or multiplicatively to create the overarching construct of perceived threat. Lewis, 1994, proposed a multiplicative combination, or action, where severity has to achieve a certain threshold to influence health behavior. Once that severity threshold has been reached, perhaps only susceptibility predicts behavior. Threat equals susceptibility plus susceptibility times severity. This hypothesis might explain why studies that have tested only direct pathways between HBM constructs and behaviors found that SEVER-ITY had weak or non-existent predictive power. Carpenter, 2010, Jans and Becker, 1984. Others have suggested that low variance in perceived severity, example, most individuals consider diseases like cancer to be very severe, empirically leads to small effect sizes. Harrison et al., 1992. Glands, K., 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glands, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 82. Table 5.2. Summary measures from 4 critical reviews of HBM constructs. Review. Publication year, study selection process. Study N/participant and summary measure 2, perceived susceptibility, perceived severity. Perceived benefits. Perceived barriers. Jans and Becker, 1984. Cross-sectional and longitudinal studies published between 1974 and 1984 that measured at least one of the HBM constructs. 46 studies 1/not reported. Significance ratio 2. 30/37, 81%. 24/37, 65%. 29/37, 78%. 25/28, 89%. Zimmerman and Wernberg, 1994. Cross-sectional and longitudinal studies published between 1980 and 1991 that measured at least one of the HBM constructs. 30 studies 1/not reported. Significance ratio 2. 9/25, 36%. 6/22, 27%. October 18, 56%. October 17, 59%. Weighted mean effect size 2 measured as beta or Pearson's are 0.3730, 0.1830, 0.1330, 0.523. Harrison et al. 1992. Cross-sectional and longitudinal studies published between 1966 and 1987 that measured all for HBM constructs. 16 studies / 3,515 adults. Weighted mean effect size 2 measured as Pearson's are 0.15, 0.08, 0.13 minus 0.21. Carpenter et al. 2010. Longitudinal non-intervention studies published between 1982 and 2007 that measured at least 2 of the HBM constructs. 18 studies / 2,702 adults. Weighted mean effect size 2 measured as Pearson's are 0.1530, 0.0530, 0.273, 0.303. Note: the 4 critical reviews covered overlapping time periods. Some studies were included in 2 or more reviews. 1. Some studies included in the review did not measure all of the HBM constructs. 2. The critical reviews used 2 different summary measures, significance ratio and mean effect size, to evaluate whether HBM constructs were good predictors of behavior. Significance ratio is the number of significant findings for each construct divided by the total number of studies measuring the construct. Mean effect size is the average magnitude of a relationship between HBM construct and behavioral outcome across all studies, weighted by the number of individuals. In each study, 3 of the 18 studies in the meta-analysis, the number included in the summary measure for perceived susceptibility was 18, for severity, 17, for benefits, 15, and for barriers, 17. Glanz, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches. Glanz, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 83. Background on the health belief model 83. No reviews have evaluated the contribution of cues to action, due in part to the fact that few studies have explained whether or how cues were measured or used for intervention. Abraham and Sheeran, 2005. Finally, no reviews have evaluated whether the addition of self-efficacy has increased the HBM's predictive validity. This is an important gap. Are interventions that use HBM effective at changing health behaviors? The fact that HBM constructs are fairly intuitive has made the use of this model popular in community-based interventions conducted among underserved groups with lower levels of formal education, and with interventions delivered by lay health advisors who assess their peers' HBM-related perceptions, often with questions such as, what is the main reason you would/would not engage in the health behavior? And who then address those factors and facilitate behavior change. Campbell et al., 2004, Earp et al., 2002. The constructs are perhaps more intuitive than those of other models because they are relatively easily defined and related to real-life experiences. HBM constructs have been used as tailoring variables not only in face-to-face communications, but also in computer-tailored interventions that are intended to reach one specific person, based on characteristics unique to that person, related to an outcome of interest, and derived from an individual assessment. Kreuter and Farrell, 2000. Page 277. Knorr, Bennett, and Harris's 2007 review of tailored print communications found the HBM was second only to the trans-theoretical model, Chapter 7, in its use for tailoring. Assessing an individual's perceived barriers to action is a fairly straightforward process. Intervention components to reduce specific barriers can then be designed and delivered to individuals for whom they are important. The HBM was developed such that interventions would be effective only if they addressed a person's specific perceptions about susceptibility, benefits, barriers, and efficacy. For example, people who already believe they are at risk for developing cancer do not need messages to convince them about their susceptibility. Those who want to get free HIV testing and know where to go but can't find a way to get their need interventions tailored to address transportation, not cost. just as it is important to validly measure HBM constructs. Tailoring technology has allowed interventions to address the HBM constructs most relevant for individuals. Noor et al., 2007, found that interventions tailored on self-efficacy were among those with largest effect sizes for behavior change, but that tailoring on susceptibility was associated with significantly decreased effects. The authors speculated it may be that in a number of health domains, messages that focus on increasing positive views and feelings toward a health behavior, example, attitudes, and those that increase one's confidence in performing the behavior, i.e., self-efficacy, are more motivating to health behavior change than messages that raise the threat of a disease, or that, if most individuals in a given study believe that they have high perceived susceptibility but continue the behavior, despite this, then perceived susceptibility may not be the most effective concept for tailoring because of a lack of variability. Noor et al., page 15. Unfortunately, this study did not assess effects associated with tailoring to particular perceived benefits or barriers. In summary, reviews of empirical evidence of the HBM highlight several important issues. First, because cross-sectional and retrospective studies have found markedly larger effect sizes for all of the HBM constructs. Measure HBM constructs. Tailoring technology has allowed interventions to measure HBM constructs. Tailoring technology. Our intervention. No reviews have evaluated the contribution of cues to action, due in part to the fact that few studies have explained whether or how cues were measured or used for intervention. Abraham and Sheeran, 2005. Finally, no reviews have evaluated whether the addition of self-efficacy has increased the HBM's predictive validity. This is an important gap. Are interventions that use HBM effective at changing health behaviors? The fact that HBM constructs are fairly intuitive has made the use of this model popular in community-based interventions conducted among underserved groups with lower levels of formal education, and with interventions delivered by lay health advisors who assess their peers' HBM-related perceptions, often with questions such as, what is the main reason you would not engage in the health behavior? And who then address those factors and facilitate behavior change. Campbell et al., 2004, Earp et al., 2002. The constructs are perhaps more intuitive than those of other models because they are relatively easily defined and related to real-life experiences. HBM constructs have been used as tailoring variables not only in face-to-face communications, but also in computer-tailored interventions that are intended to reach one specific person, based on characteristics unique to that person, related to an outcome of interest, and derived from an individual assessment. Kreuter and Farrell, 2000. Page 277. Noor, Bennett, and Harris's 2007 review of tailored print communications found the HBM was second only to the trans-theoretical model, Chapter 7, in its use for tailoring. Assessing an individual's perceived barriers to action is a fairly straightforward process. Intervention components to reduce specific barriers can then be designed and delivered to individuals for whom they are important. The HBM was developed such that interventions would be effective only if they addressed a person's specific perceptions about susceptibility, benefits, barriers, and efficacy. For example, people who already believe they are at risk for developing cancer do not need messages to convince them about their susceptibility. Those who want to get free HIV testing and know where to go but can't find a way to get there need interventions tailored to address transportation, not cost. Just as it is important to validly measure HBM constructs, tailoring technology has allowed interventions to address the HBM constructs most relevant for individuals. Noor et al., 2007, found that interventions tailored on self-efficacy were among those with largest effect sizes for behavior change, but that tailoring on susceptibility was associated with significantly decreased effects. The authors speculated it may be that in a number of health domains, messages that focus on increasing positive views and feelings toward a health behavior, example, attitudes, and those that increase one's confidence in performing the behavior, i.e., self-efficacy, are more motivating to health behavior change than messages that raise the threat of a disease, or that, if most individuals in a given study believe that they have high perceived susceptibility but continue the behavior, despite this, then perceived susceptibility may not be the most effective concept for tailoring because of a lack of variability. Noor et al., page 15. Unfortunately, this study did not assess effects associated with tailoring to particular perceived benefits or barriers. In summary, reviews of empirical evidence of the HBM highlight several important issues. First, because cross-sectional and retrospective studies have found markedly larger effect sizes for all of the HBM constructs when compared to prospective studies, researchers should glance, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 84. 84 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. Interpret cross-sectional studies with caution. For a discussion of how cross-sectional STUD-IES may overestimate strengths of relationships between HBM constructs and behavior, see Weinstein, 2007. Also, there has been little testing of researchers' proposals to use mathematical combinations of HBM constructs, or explore more complex pathways linking HBM constructs to each other. Becker and Mayman, 1975, Lewis, 1994, Strecker, Champion, and Rosenstock, 1997. Although many studies demonstrate relationships of HBM constructs to various health behaviors, we still do not understand how the constructs operate to influence health behaviors. Measurement of HBM constructs. One of the most important limitations in both descriptive and intervention research using the health belief model has been variability in measurement of its central constructs. Carpenter, 2010, Harrison et al., 1992, Jans and Becker, 1984. Several important principles have guided HBM measurement development. Construct definitions should be consistent with HBM theory as originally conceptualized. Measures also should be specific to the behavior being addressed. Example, barriers to mammography may be quite different from barriers to colonoscopy, and relevant to the population among whom they will be used. Example, groups with lower versus higher health literacy. To ensure content validity, it is important to measure the full range of factors that may influence behaviors. Formative research is often required to identify factors perceived as particular benefits, barriers, and susceptibility beliefs for particular health behaviors among particular populations and in particular settings. Once identified, these beliefs may be incorporated into scales that include multiple items for each construct. Using a scale rather than a single item reduces measurement error and increases the probability of including all relative components for each construct. However, scales should not be applied to different groups without being tested for reliability and validity. Cultural and population differences make applying scales without such examination prone to error. Despite notable exceptions, Champion, 1984, 1993, Champion and Scott, 1997, King et al., 2012, Rall et al., 2001, Rall, Menon, Champion, Foster, and Skinner, 2000, Russell, Champion, and Perkins, 2003, Vernon, Myers, and Tilley, 1997. It appears that most studies using the HBM have not conducted adequate reliability and validity of measures testing prior to research. This lack of scientific rigor in measurement stems in part from the model's lack of specificity regarding relationships among its constructs. A major component of construct validity in most models is the determination of relationships between constructs and the relationship of constructs to the behavior they are predicting. Applications of the health belief model. In this section, we discuss how the HBM has been applied to research on two health behaviors for interventions to increase use of colorectal cancer, CRC, screening and, descriptively, for uptake of human papillomavirus, HPV, vaccination. HBM and colon cancer screening. Several reviews of colon cancer screening interventions were published between 2010 and 2012. Morrow, Dallow, and Jolka, 2010, reviewed community-based trials, while Naylor, Ward, Glanz, K., 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 85. Applications of the Health Belief Model 85. And Polite, 2012, focused on interventions for minority populations. Rall, Menon, Bernis, and Breslau, 2012, evaluated all available randomized controlled trials, and Holden et al., 2010, looked at factors associated with appropriate use and quality of available screening tests. Only Rall, Menon et al., 2012, reported the intervention's theoretical frameworks, showing that, from 1997 to 2007, HBM was the most widely used theoretical model for interventions that were effective in increasing use of fecal occult blood testing, FOBT, and colonoscopy. The positive finding from reviews of HBM constructs and screening tests led Rall, Skinner et al., 2012, to develop and test an HBM-based, tablet-based, interactive, computer-tailored intervention promoting colorectal cancer screening, CRC, to be used by African American patients while waiting for their primary care appointments. In a randomized trial, Study participants waiting to see their providers were assigned to use the tailored, interactive program or to receive non-tailored, usual care CRC screening information developed by the American Cancer Society. The intervention program, titled Cologne Testing, Celebrate Life for Years to Come, uses narrative vignettes that show friends interacting in the context of a 50th birthday party. The man celebrating his 50th birthday has recently been to see his doctor, who recommended CRC screening. The program's introductory scene shows friends around a table discussing birthdays and health as one ages. As the man's wife sets a birthday cake with lighted candles in front of her husband, a narrator says, Mr. Robert Gibson celebrates his 50th birthday today with his family and friends. Robert's in good health. He watches what he eats, stays active, and takes his blood pressure medicine. But there's something else he'll need to start doing to stay healthy in the years ahead. Cologne testing is something everyone needs to think about when they get to be Robert's age. Some of his friends and family members have had their colon tested, but others, like Robert, haven't even thought about it. Let's see what you think. The interactive program then asks a number of questions based on HBM constructs. Based on users' responses, the program selects narration, graphics, and video from a library of all potential versions. The measures of HBM perceptions in the program were developed and tested for reliability and validity in Rall and colleagues' previous research, Rall et al., 2000-2001. Program messages and graphics were developed through extensive formative research, input from a community advisory board, and pre-testing with African American primary care patients to determine whether messages addressed the constructs as intended by intervention developers and were both understandable and culturally relevant. Cologne testing, Celebrate Life for Years to Come, is described in detail elsewhere, Rall, Skinner, et al., 2012. A few examples from the tailored message library follow. Program users whose perceived susceptibility is so low they think they do not need screening. Receive messages emphasizing their personal risk factors. One of the messages, created for those with a close relative diagnosed with CRC, shows a graph with the number of affected relatives on the x-axis and the percentage chance of getting CRC on the y-axis. There is a stationary bar on the x-axis at 6%, the risk of someone with no family history. Then, a second bar appears at 0% and grows to 18%, the risk for someone with a close relative diagnosed before the age of 60. As users watch the second bar grow, the narrator glance, K, 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 86. 86 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. Says, this picture shows how your chances of getting colon cancer go up when someone in your family has it. Messages for those without family history mention other risk factors, such as age and race. Therefore, in addition to tailored text, the messages were tailored in numeric percentages and in visual representations of magnitude. There are also messages addressing potential barriers, benefits, and self-efficacy. In one example, those who say they would put off screening because they don't want to know if something is wrong see this dialogue between two of the program's characters. James, why would I want to take a test to find something wrong? I don't go looking for trouble. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Emmett, I used to think the same way. But then, I had the test. All I know is, if I hadn't had the test, they wouldn't have found those 2 polyps that may have turned into cancer. Program users who say a colonoscopy would be painful or embarrassing watch this dialogue. Mary, it sounds to me like a colonoscopy would just hurt, and I would just be too embarrassed. Patricia, well, you know, Mary, I thought the same thing. I went, they gave me some medicine, I dozed off, when I woke up it was over. I didn't have time to be embarrassed. I didn't even know what had happened. As hypothesized, participants in the randomized trial who received the interactive program tailored on HBM constructs had greater increases in perceived susceptibility and benefits and reductions in perceived barriers, Rall, Skinner, et al., 2012, than those who received the non-tailored material. They were also more likely to report discussions with their healthcare providers about CRC screening, perhaps consequentially, and to have provider-recommended tie-ins for CRC screening documented in their electronic medical records, Christie et al., 2013. The intervention group also completed significantly more FOBs compared to the group receiving usual care. HBM and HPV vaccine adoption. Human papillomavirus, HPV, infections cause the overwhelming majority of cervical cancers, about 400,000 cases per year out of a total of 600,000 cases per year worldwide, and account for a large proportion of several other cancers, including oropharyngeal cancers, which are increasing among both males and females. Even before the first HPV vaccine was approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in 2006, several investigators had examined HBM constructs' association with vaccine acceptability among mothers and their intentions to vaccinate their daughters, Brewer and Fazekas, 2007. Since the HPV vaccine was recommended for routine administration to adolescent and young adult females in 2006, Markowitz et al., 2007, and extended to similar age males in 2011, Dunn et al., 2011. 15 studies have glands, K, 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glands, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 87. Applications of the Health Belief, Model 87. Assessed one or more HBM constructs in actual vaccine uptake, Allen et al., 2009, 2010, Bastani et al., 2011, Brewer et al., 2011, Bynum, Brandt, Sharp, Williams, and Kerr, 2011, Conroy et al., 2009, Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Gerund, Whibley, and Bland, 2009, Juroskova, Bari, O'Brien, and McCaffrey, 2011, Krachik et al., 2012, Licht et al., 2010, Manhart et al., 2011, Nailway et al., 2012, Ryder, Brewer, Gottlieb, McCree, and Smith, 2009, Roberts, Gerard, Reimer, and Gibbons, 2010. 7 of the 15 studies were explicitly designed to measure all 5 HBM constructs, Brewer et al., 2011, Bynum et al., 2011, Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Juroskova et al., 2011, Krachik et al., 2012, Manhart et al., 2011, Ryder et al., 2009, whereas 5 measured selected HBM constructs along with constructs from other theories, such as the theory of planned behavior, social cognitive theory, and the trans-theoretical model, Allen et al. 2009, 2010, Bastani et al., 2011, Gerund et al., 2009, Roberts et al., 2010. Most studies were descriptive, looking at constructs' direct association with initiation, defined as getting the first of the 3-dose vaccination series, although Manhart et al., 2011, also examined 3-dose series completion. For studies used longitudinal designs, Brewer et al., 2011, Conroy et al., 2009, Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Juroskova et al., 2011, with a range of 2, Juroskova et al., 2011, to 16 months, Brewer et al., 2011, between measurement of HBM constructs and vaccine behavior. Only Gerund and Shepard, 2012, and Juroskova et al., 2011, measured the HBM in the context of a vaccine promotion intervention. Gerund and Shepard, 2012, used structural equation modeling to examine whether cues to action indirectly influenced behavior through susceptibility, benefits, and the perceived barrier of vaccine cost. The others assessed direct relationships between each HBM construct and vaccination behavior. Table 5.3 reports the significance ratios for perceived susceptibility, severity, benefits, barriers, and cues to action. Variations in the study's comprehensiveness and quality of construct measurement may have affected findings. Perceived susceptibility was measured most frequently, but inconsistent measurement may have contributed to discrepancies in findings. Half the studies used a multi-item scale with reported validity or reliability, Allen et al., 2009, Brewer et al., 2011, Bynum et al., 2011, Conroy et al., 2009, Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Juroskova et al., 2011, Krachik et al., 2012. Several investigators used single items that measured perceptions of risks for different health outcomes, acquiring an HPV infection, Manhart et al., 2011, transmitting HPV, Licht et al., 2010, or developing cervical cancer, Nailway et al., 2012, and under different conditions, such as risk given past sexual behavior, Bynum et al., 2011, risk relative to others, Bastani et al., 2011, or risk with versus without vaccination, Gerund et al., 2009, Roberts et al., 2010. Several cross-sectional studies measured perceived susceptibility post-vaccination. Table 5.3 summary of 15 studies measuring HBM constructs and HPV vaccine initiation. Summary measure perceived susceptibility, perceived severity, perceived benefits, perceived barriers, cues to action significance ratio 1/7, 70%. 2/9, 22%. 4/10, 40%. 4/7, 57%. May 7, 71%. Note: the 15 studies did not measure all of the HBM constructs. 3 studies were not included in the significance ratio calculations because of their methods. Allen et al., 2009, 2010, used stage of adoption as the outcome variable. Nailway et al., 2012, surveyed only those who had initiated the vaccine series. One significance ratio is the number of significant findings for each construct divided by the total number of studies measuring the construct. Glanz, K., 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches. Glanz, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 88. 88 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. When susceptibility should have decreased, Weinstein, 2007. Thus it is not surprising that patterns of association between perceived susceptibility and vaccination were inconsistent. The significance ratio was 70%, Table 5.3, with 5 studies finding a positive association, Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Gerund et al., 2009, Juroskova et al., 2011, Licht et al., 2010, Roberts et al., 2010, 2 finding negative associations, Krachik et al., 2012, Ryder et al., 2009, and 3 finding no associations, Bastani et al., 2011, Brewer et al., 2011, Bynum et al., 2011. Perceived severity was assessed in 11 studies. Multi-item scales focused on seriousness of both HPV infection and cervical cancer. Among the 9 studies that measured HPV vaccine initiation, most found no association between severity and HPV vaccine initiation. Significance ratio equals 22%. Perceived benefits and barriers were measured in 10 studies. Operational definitions of benefits mainly focused on the vaccine's effectiveness. Significance ratio equals 40%. However, investigators assessed a variety of potential barriers, including cost, difficulty finding a healthcare provider, concern about side effects, pain, and worry that the vaccine might cause fertility problems or encourage sexual activity at an earlier age. Most researchers looked at independent associations between each of these barriers and vaccination behavior. 2 studies reported factor analyses to determine whether the barriers' responses could be combined into a summary score, but results showed that they did not load onto one latent factor and thus could not be used as a scale. Brewer et al., 2011, Gerund and Shepard, 2012. As with susceptibility and benefits, findings for barriers were mixed. Significance ratio equals 57%. Cues to action were explicitly measured in 6 studies, with 4 using a single item measure, physician recommendation. While this is an incomplete assessment of cues in terms of the HBM developer's conceptualization described above, it mirrors measurement of cues for other behaviors. Example, cancer screening. Physician recommendation was directly or indirectly associated with vaccine uptake in 4 of the 6 studies, Bynum et al., 2011, Gerund and Shepard, 2012, Krachik et al., 2012, Ryder et al., 2009. Summary of HBM application examples. These 2 examples of health belief model application to colon cancer screening and HPV vaccination highlight the process of applying the model to new behaviors. Colon cancer screening has been available since the 1980s, although guidelines and recommended methods for screening have shifted over this time period. Levin et al., 2008, Lieberman, 2009, McFarland et al., 2008, U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, 2008, Whitlock, Lin, Lyles, Beal, and Fu, 2008. In ensuing years, research has described HBM constructs associated with screening uptake, including specific perceived benefits and barriers associated with the different kinds of colon cancer testing options and among different populations. Measures of HBM constructs have been developed and tested, and interventions based on the HBM have been tested in randomized screening promotion trials. However, HPV vaccines have been available and recommended only since 2006 for females and later for males. Markowitz et al., 2007. Most published research to date has been descriptive, to determine what constructs are associated with vaccination uptake. In these studies, measures and operational definitions of HBM constructs have varied widely, as has timing of measurement. Example, some studies measured Glanz, K., 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 321. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 89. Summary 89. Perceived susceptibility before vaccination with others measuring it after. Although results from a wave of intervention trials now underway will be published in the next few years, we currently lack examples of how HBM constructs are being operationalized for HPV vaccine promotion interventions and whether they are successful. Challenges for future HBM research. The HBM has been used for more than half a century to predict health-related behaviors and inform the development of interventions to change behaviors. As indicated by the research reviewed here, the HBM has been useful in predicting and explaining cancer screening and HPV vaccination. Its intuitive conceptualizations have made its modifiable beliefs popular for use in interventions. HBM constructs are also often used in tailored interventions to modify individuals' beliefs. For instance, when individuals do not perceive benefits to an action, the interventions seek to strengthen their perception of benefits. Many studies have found that interventions tailored to address specific barriers predict adherence to recommended health behaviors. However, even after all this model's use, we still know relatively little about relationships among HBM constructs, such as whether they all directly predict behavior or whether some beliefs mediate the relationships to behavior. Notable recent exceptions are studies by Gerund et al. 2009 and Murphy et al. 2014. In addition, few have investigated factors that moderate HBM constructs' effect on behavior. Example, Lee et al. 2003. Key questions about the HBM remain. For example, does self-efficacy add unique variance for predicting behavior? Does self-efficacy influence behavior both directly and indirectly through barriers? Advances in statistical analysis, such as structural equation modeling, provide theorists and researchers who use and/or test theory with new opportunities to extend understanding about HBM relative to other commonly used health behavior theories featured in this edition of this book. New empirical studies evaluating unique contributions of HBM constructs and building consensus across theories, Knorr and Zimmerman, 2005, Weinstein and Rothman, 2005, may further enhance our understanding of how HBM constructs affect behavior. This has the potential to advance even more effective use of the model in the future. For instance, although many studies have examined individual relationships between constructs and outcome behaviors, fewer have identified relationships between constructs or identified moderator or mediator effects. See Brewer and Gilkey, 2012, and Weinstein, 2007, for further discussion about study designs and methods to test health behavior theories. Summary. In this chapter, we described origins of the health belief model, reviewed and defined its key components and hypothesized relationships, summarized critical reviews of the HBM, and provided examples of how the HBM has been applied to colorectal cancer screening and HPV vaccination. The HBM is a model focused on cognitions that does not consider the emotional component of behavior. This latter component, along with cues to action and self-efficacy, should be more systematically incorporated into HBM research. Glanz, K. 2015. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. Created from Howard on January 9, 2023, 3:21. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, C05.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:23 a.m. page 90. 90 Chapter 5, The Health Belief Model. References. Abraham, C., and Sheeran, P., 2005. The Health Belief Model. In M. Connor and P. Norman, eds, Predicting Health Behavior, 2nd edition, pages 28 to 80. Philadelphia, Open University Press. Allen, J. D. Mullagy, A. P. Shelton, R. C. Othis, M. K. Fontenot, H. B. and Hannah, R. 2009. Stage of Adoption of the Human Papillomavirus Vaccine Among College Women. Preventive Medicine, 48, 420 to 425. Allen, J. D. Othis, M. K. Shelton, R. C. Lee, Y. Norman, N. Tom, L. and Del Carmen, M. G. 2010. Parental Decision Making About the HPV Vaccine. Cancer Epidemiology, Biomarkers and Prevention, 19-9, 2187 to 2198. Bandura, A. 1997. Self-Efficacy, The Exercise of Control. New York, Freeman. Bandura, A. 1999. Social Learning Theory. Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, Prentice Hall. Bandura A 2000.